Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Lush Foliage. In today's video we are talking about a very easy to grow plant which is called as the Tradescantia Spathacea. Yes, this also belongs to the family of Tradescantia, the same one that we spoke about in the last few videos, which was Tradescantia zebrina. This also belongs to the same genus. The family name I will put it up on the screen. Now this plant is also commonly called as the boat lily, oyster plant, Moses in the cradle. I think the reason why this plant is called as the oyster plant, probably it's because of the flowers. Now this is where the flower starts to grow. They do not grow like the regular Tradescantia, which tends to grow quite high. These will only grow inside, in between the leaves like this, and this is what it looks like, a shape of an oyster shell, and the flowers are going to be white and they are going to be inside it. When it tends to flower, it tends to look like it's an oyster shell with pearls inside. So that's why I think it's called as the oyster plant. Now talking about how big this plant can get, this plant can reach anywhere from 6 to 12 inches and 12 to 24 inches in width. It prefers a slightly acidic or neutral soil. It is native to Central America. Now guys, this is a perennial plant, so you do not need to be worried. This plant will not die, but it does go dormant during the winters. It is a summer growing plant. So in this video we will be only talking about this variety. There is another variety which is called as the discolor or the tricolor. I will put the image on the screen. It has a little bit different requirement. We will talk about that in some other video. Now this plant has really long lace shaped leaves which are glossy. The upper side of the leaves are dark green in color and the undersides are dark purple in color. As I have already spoken about this multiple times, any plant that has a darker underside, these plants can do well in low light or less light conditions as well. Please do not expose this plant to direct afternoon sunlight, otherwise the leaves will get burnt. If the plant is mature, you can keep it in morning sunlight, or the plant can also do well in partial shade, filtered sunlight or dappled sunlight as well. But please do not keep it in afternoon sunlight. The leaves will get burnt and the plant will not do quite well. Now talking about watering, whenever you feel that the upper layer of soil around 2 to 3 inches is dry, now this is during the summers because summer is their growing period. Whenever you see upper layer of soil is dry around 2 to 3 inches, you can go ahead and do a complete watering until the water starts passing through the drain hole. During winters, you will have to cut down on the watering because this plant tends to go dormant during the winters. So reduce your watering. Apart from that, this plant is also drought tolerant, so you do not need to be worried. Right now, my plant is slightly dehydrated. As you can see, the leaves are falling downwards. Ideally, the leaves tend to stand straight like this when they are well hydrated. I just repotted it today because of a lot of painting work going on. There's a lot of paint spots on it. So I had repotted it because the other pot was completely covered with paint. So I have not watered it. That's why the leaves are kind of falling downwards. Now talking about the soil, these plants prefer a fairly rich, well-draining soil with a slightly acidic to neutral soil pH. You can use the same type of soil mix that I tend to use, which is coco peat, garden soil, sand and perlite. You need to make the soil mix loose and porous. Ensure that you're using a pot with drain holes so that the excess water can flow out. Talking about fertilizers, it's typically not necessary to fertilize an oyster plant, but it can help to encourage healthy growth. You can also use any fertilizer that you make it at home, probably some compost or seaweed solution, or even the compost tea, which I usually tend to use. Now the temperature and humidity, as I said, these are tropical plants. They prefer a warmer environment in order to grow. That's why they tend to grow in the summers. Talking about humidity, again, because they are tropical plants, they prefer a slight amount of humidity, so you can easily keep it in the kitchen, or you can even keep it in the bathroom. It is going to work out really well. Now these are the only two varieties that I have. There is another variety that is called as the discolor or the tricolor. I have put the image on the screen, but apart from that, there are new cultivars that are coming up in the market. Like this one, it's called as the Vitata because this one's foliage is made out of yellow and green stripes. And then you have a stripe in pink, which has green, cream and pink color. Then the third one is the Sitaras Gold, which has more copper gold leaves with burgundy underside. So there are so many cultivars that are coming up in the market. And talking about propagation, this plant can be easily propagated via separating of the offsets. Let the offsets reach to a decent size and then you can separate it. Probably in this summer, I might happen to get some more babies coming out from this. And it's a very invasive plant. You just leave it aside and it starts growing a lot. Like over here, as you can see, this is the dwarf variety and it is already starting to put out a lot of pups. And once it's reached a decent size, you can just separate it. As you can see, they are going to have individual stems and you can just cut them off. Stem cutting is one of the method that you can separate them. They are going to do quite well. Now talking about pest, ideally this plant is quite pest resilient, but again it's always better to check, because if you have any other plants that are affected with mealybugs, scale insects or white flies, it might happen to come onto this plant. But ideally this plant usually does not get affected with any pest. The main important question, is this plant toxic? Yes, this plant is toxic to humans as well as pets, because it does contain some sap. So ensure that you're keeping this plant away from the reach of small children and pets. So guys, that's all about it. I hope that this video was helpful to you. If it was, please hit the like button. If you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing to it. Until then, take care, stay safe and keep propagating.